Namaskar, I am Tushar Gandhi. I would like to start this video with a sincere appeal to Shri Sonam Wangchuk to now end his fast. He has achieved something spectacular. After a long time, a person's suffering has managed to awaken Indian masses like we haven't seen for a long time. And his fast is today bringing out people onto the streets in support of him. That is one of the greatest signs in the apathy that we saw in the Indian masses during the last 12 years of the NDA rule in India. Many mass movements happened, but the masses were not awakened to the extent that Sonam Wangchuk's penance has brought about today. And I think Sonam Wangchuk should also realize this and be satisfied, because the demand of the resignation of the Minister of Education in the NDA government, in the Modi government, was never going to be achieved. We must understand that the present government has its roots in a fascist ideology. They do not believe in democratic principles. They do not respect democratic institutions. They have trampled everything. We have seen that in the NRC-CAA movement, the way they sent goons to attack Shaheen Bagh, the way the farmers were forced to sit on the road for 1 year on the outskirts of Delhi, and the kind of barricades that were put in their way shows that this government doesn't bother. It's as bad as the British colonial government. There is an argument and an opinion gaining ground that the non-violent movement succeeded because the British were benevolent. If you look at the history of the British Empire, तो आपको ये दिखेगा कि वो कहीं भी किसी भी तरीके से हृदयशील नहीं थे. I'm not just talking about India. I'm giving examples of India, but if you were to add all the human massacres conducted in the name of the British Crown in totality, we must think about that. सिर्फ हिंदुस्तान की बात करो तो जलियांवाला बाग में उन्होंने निर्दयता से निहत्थे नागरिकों को भून डाला, रहस डाला, और जिस वहशी डायर ने वो हत्याकांड किया था उसको आज भी एम्पायर का एक हीरो माना जाता है यूके. आज तक ब्रिटिश ताज ने जलियांवाला बाग को एक इंसानियत के खिलाफ का गुनाह नहीं माना है. Neither has the government of UK apologized sincerely and condemned Dyer for committing a massacre of humanity. That is how cruel the British Empire was, the way they dealt with the revolutionaries. Despite Bapu appealing to Irwin, the viceroy, to spare Bhagat Singh and his friends, not once, not twice, but on 5 recorded occasions, the colonial administration refused to convert his execution into a long-term sentence. Even during the 21-day fast at the Aga Khan Palace Detention Center, instead of releasing him or giving him medical aid, they sent out drafts of obituaries worldwide to all the diplomatic missions of the British Empire and gave instructions to the diplomats on the obituary to be released in case of Gandhi's death. The colonial administration stocked up on wood for his cremation in the premises in case of his death. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan was visiting Shanghai, and he went to the British High Commission there, and he found one of those missives which said that in case of Gandhi's death, this is the obituary you have to release. And he came back and said that the British government is prepared for Gandhi's death. This is how benevolent the British government was towards Gandhi. So I think that theory needs to be debunked, that it would have been easier it was easier for Gandhi because the British were kind and gentle. Well, yes, they were benevolent towards Savarkar, whose apology they accepted and gave him a pension to become their stooge. This government is born out of that slave mentality to the colonials and the fascist mentality that they inherited from the Nazis of Europe. If you look at Golwalkar and his bunch of thoughts, you see that it is largely inspired by Mein Kampf from Adolf Hitler. So how can we expect them to obey and honor democratic principles? How do we expect them to even think that in a democracy the people are the biggest power there is? Because to them, they are the supreme rulers. As bad as a crown, as bad as a colonialist. Because you must remember the history of the freedom movement. At every opportunity, the parent organization of BJP, the RSS, collaborated with the British and tried to sabotage the freedom movement. The greatest example was Shyama Prasad Mukherjee's letters to the governor of Bengal on how to thwart the Quit India movement and marginalize it. All these are historic facts. And so I reiterate them today because of this whole idea that if we had the British today, maybe they would have been better with Sonam Wangchuk than the present government. No, they are both peas from the same pod. The fascist government that we face today and the colonial government whose sole objective was to sustain the crown in India. There's also a campaign saying that Bapu's protests or fasts were for an audience and conducted for an audience. Actually, on social media and in the 2-minute reel format, accusing that Gandhi's methods did not benefit the forest dwellers or they couldn't have succeeded. Yes, when he did the Dandi Kooch at the end of his 241-mile walk when he arrived in Dandi, he did give a message saying, I want world sympathy in this battle of right against might. The very fact that the battle of right against might does not succeed without evoking a public sentiment, a public empathy, a public sympathy is the crux of that battle. Because it is not a battle fought with bullets and bombs where the might of the weapon will subdue the opponent. This is a reformation on a moral and ethical basis, and so a public opinion has to be created. And that is where initially when Bapu planned to walk for 6 days and pick up salt at the nearest saline water source, he realized that it was too short a time to explain to the people whose support he wanted about what he was doing. And he extended it for 24 days. And that is where the salt satyagraha was such a spectacular success, where after Bapu picked up salt at Dandi, it spread across the nation. Even when all the leaders of that movement were in prison, people were making salt in their villages, in their hamlets, in their communities, in their localities, and defying the British.
Terraces also.
And on terraces and halls in the city. In Mumbai itself, there were three venues where the salt satyagraha was performed, and the British colonial government brutalized the satyagrahi. But that is the essence. Bapu's fasts were very rarely against an administration, very rarely against some grievance that he wished to resolve. Most of his fasts were penances for when he felt that him or those who he considered to be his closest aides and colleagues were straying from the path and erring in their ethical and moral behavior. The only 3 fasts which he carried out because of certain circumstances that he felt were not acceptable were the epic fast against the Pune Pact, where he felt that if the British awarded a separate electorate to the Dalits, then the freedom movement would be divided. And not because he was worried that his leadership would be compromised, but because he realized that the Dalits were a very big and important part of the freedom movement. And if the British succeeded in them removing them from the mainstream freedom movement, the freedom movement would be jeopardized and may even collapse. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, although he felt that he was coerced into accepting some of the terms and come to a compromise with Bapu, was a patriot. And that's why, with that consideration, he shook the hand that was extended to him. He felt betrayed. I would have felt betrayed also. But that and the last 2 fasts in Calcutta and Delhi, when Bapu felt that his people, whom he felt were his people, whom he trusted, had abandoned his path. And so he fasted to bring them back to their senses and to establish a communal harmony and peace in the nation. Not many people know that during the entire peace yatra in Noakhali and Tipera, the riot-torn districts, and then in Bihar, Bapu had conducted a fast where he consumed half the nutrition that he used to have in a day as a penance for what he believed was wrong. It took a toll on his health, but throughout that yatra, he continued to do that. When he came back to Kolkata in free, independent India, his only 2 fasts in independent India were conducted in public because at that time the government focused on him, because they knew that the message that he was sending out, the people would believe more than if the government was to make appeals for communal peace and harmony and the cessation of hostilities between the 2 communities. And these were the facts for which Nathuram Godse was sent to silence that voice which was leading India away from where it is being led for the past 12 years by the present government. So please let us not say that the British were very benevolent and that's why our non-violent movement succeeded. It was difficult. It took 4 decades to bring the British to their knees. 4 decades of continuous sacrifices by millions of people. And that is where I want to go back to where I started and congratulate Sonam Wangchuk that he, after a long time, seems to have awakened the soul and the spirit of the Indian people. So please understand that before generally making statements which sound very good in a 45-second reel, but are far from the reality of history, which demean the sacrifices of stalwarts like Bhagat Singh and martyrs like Babu Genu and so many others who laid down their lives, who sacrificed their entire lifetime for the freedom of this country.